prisons. The separation for years from the outside. The persecutions. The exile. He gave up his wealth and his station. He proclaimed his mission that God had sent him to found a new world religion, uniting all the existing religions. Each, he said, proclaims a truth. Each reveals God. Now we must end separation, man from man, nation from nation. Armies range across the world. Man faces annihilation. Why, he asked, do we spend more on the means to destroy man than to help him to live?
When the kings and princes reviled him and sent him from Persia to die, when he was reviled and put in chains, he did not turn from his path. He said that God sent his prophets according to the need of the people. This he called progressive revelation.
Who was he? They demanded. And he said, Baha'u'llah, which means glory of God.
Presents Lamp Unto My Feet. Today, and his name shall be one. The teachings of the Prophet Baha'u'llah and the Bahá'í Faith.
The Baha'i Faith is the newest of the world religions. It numbers some 25,000 communities in 280 countries. The major shrines are at Haifa, Israel, and Wilmette, Illinois, outside Chicago. It is an independent faith, not a sect or an offshoot of another creed. It began 123 years ago in Persia, when the Bab, a descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, announced the coming of a new prophet who would unite all existing religions. This would be Baha'u'llah, whose name in Arabic means glory of God.
Baha'is shown here at the shrine in Wilmette come from all religious and racial backgrounds, which is characteristic of the Baha'i Faith.
The central idea of the new religion was to combine the teachings of all the major faiths into a new whole which would lead to union of mankind. The main tenets of the faith were independent investigation of truth, the essential unity of all men, equality of all peoples, equality of rights for men and women, a universal language, peace and world federation, abolition of prejudice.
The Baha'i teaching says, except all great prophets gone before, we destroy no other creeds and leave all doors open. Saddened by the continual strife among believers of many religions and wearied of their intolerance of each other, the Baha'i teaching embodies the real spirit of Christ, so often denied and misunderstood. Unity instead of strife. Hope instead of condemnation. Love instead of hate. And a great reassurance for all men.
Elijah dwelt on Carmel, and the holy mountain of the Lord sang from the verses of Elijah. And the vision of Moses and of Jesus and of Muhammad sang through the ends of the earth. Ascend to Carmel and Sinai and the Mount of Beatitudes, and sing the prophecy which God hath sung through thy lips.
Baha'u'llah, exiled from Persia, imprisoned in Palestine, condemned to see Carmel rising from the water. Across the water from the prison. How long shall they keep him? 10 years, 100, 1,000.
Baha'u'llah, the one foretold by the Bab, which means herald, was born in Tehran, Persia, on November 12, 1817. His given name was Hussein Ali. His family was wealthy, and a career in government service was open to him. But he declined a life of position and luxury. He joined the cause of the Bab. The Muslim clergy and governments violently opposed the new religion and attempted to suppress it with imprisonment, floggings, and public executions. When Baha'u'llah joined with the Bab, he knew that this would lead to persecution. On August 15, 1852, he was imprisoned in Persia, then finally exiled and jailed to the ancient Crusader prison in Akku, Palestine. From the window of his cell, he could see the slope of Mount Carmel.
Amid the agony and gloom of this place, the revelation of Baha'u'llah was born.
In a dream, and on every side, the Spirit of God spoke to him.
Verily we shall render thee victorious by thyself and by thy pen. Grieve not for that which hath befallen thee, neither be thou afraid, for thou art in safety. Ere long God will raise thee up, the treasure of the earth.
After 11 years of confinement in prison and the city of Akku, Baha'u'llah was permitted to spend his last years with his followers at Baji, a nearby estate abandoned by its owner during a plague. Finally, in 1890, on the slope of Carmel, Baha'u'llah stood at this spot, later marked by this lantern, and pointed out to Abdul Baha, his eldest son, the site which was to serve as the permanent resting place of the Bab, and would be the world shrine of the faith. The Baha'i shrine in Haifa, built in 1932, is world-renowned for its beauty. Not only the pilgrims, who are Baha'is from all over the world, come to study, to pray, to follow the route of Baha'u'llah's journey in exile, but visitors, adults and children, come from all over the world to see the shrine and its magnificent gardens. Here, children of an Israeli agricultural settlement are seen in front of Pilgrim House, which is the residence of Baha'is during their stay in Haifa and Akku. The Baha'i Faith is a layman's religion. There is no paid clergy. All the offices and the organization of the faith are carried out by laymen, by volunteers, appointed by the elected local Baha'i body known as the Local Spiritual Assembly. The assemblies are limited to 9 members and are elected each year on April 21st, commemorating the date of the declaration of Baha'u'llah's divine mission. The local assemblies are coordinated in each country by a National Spiritual Assembly, another elected body of 9 members, who are chosen annually by the delegates from the local Baha'i communities. During 40 years of exile and imprisonment,
Baha'u'llah wrote more than 100 books and tablets, which are the basis of the Baha'i Faith, reflecting the essential unity of all creation.
Behold, Baha'u'llah wrote, how its light is now dawning upon the world's darkened horizon.
Unity in the political realm, the early glimmerings of which can now be discerned.
Unity in world undertakings, the consummation of which, before long, will be witnessed.
Unity in freedom, which will surely come to pass.
Unity in religion, which is the cornerstone of the foundation itself, and which, by the power of God, will be revealed in all its splendor.
Unity of nations, which in this century will be established, causing all the people of the world to regard themselves as citizens of one common fatherland. And he shall grant the saints to eat from the tree of life, and the spirit of holiness shall be upon them. The years of trees, the years of man, all things flowing to God, all things of God, all things moving from separate to whole, from darkness to light, from regions where fear and the strife of the soul spend all the perfection of man, to the place where men become as one region of God. The only European to have ever seen Baha'u'llah, Professor E.G. Brown of Cambridge University, England, wrote this description of a meeting with him at Baji, outside of Baku in 1890.
A second or two elapsed before, with a throb of wonder and awe, I became conscious that the room was not untenanted. In the corner sat a wondrous and venerable figure, the face of him on whom I gazed. I can never forget, though I cannot describe it. Those piercing eyes seemed to read one's very soul. Power and authority sat on that ample brow, while the deep lines on the forehead and face implied an age which the jet black hair and beard, flowing down in indistinguishable luxuriance, seemed to belie. No need to ask in whose presence I stood. As I bowed myself before one who is the object of an adoration and love which kings might envy and emperors sigh for in vain, a mild, dignified voice bade me be seated, and then continued.
Praise be to God that thou hast attained, that all nations should become one faith, and all men as brothers. So it shall be. Let not a man glory in this, that he loves his country. Let him rather glory in this, that he loves mankind.
At the recent National Baha'i Convention in Wilmette, Illinois, various expressions of American Baha'is regarding their faith were recorded by Lamp Unto My Feet.
Every Baha'i convention has a primary objective of the election of the new National Spiritual Assembly, and secondarily a consultative function The delegates from all over the country who are elected in an electoral fashion come to consult with us, to tell the National Assembly, to recommend to it what it should be doing, what they are thinking, what actions to take. And so it is a combined function. The central function, of course, is the election of a new National Spiritual Assembly.
I'm a teacher at the Phoenix Indian School, and I've been a Baha'i for about 5 months now. It's kind of a unique situation because I became a Baha'i after beginning at the Indian School. And the Indians in America are one of the key points in the Baha'i faith. Abdul-Baha, who is the son of the Prophet, stressed the teaching of the American Indians. He said that these people, when they are given education and guidance, will be some of the shining lights of this faith, that they will be the ones to spread this faith. And I can see how this could be true, because in the children that I teach, they have beautiful character. This sense of peace and justice and brotherhood is just innate. It's something that if you ask them about, they probably couldn't tell you, because they don't talk about it. It's just something that is a part of them. And I think that if they receive the teachings of the Baha'i faith, these divine teachings, that they'll just, well, in a lot of cases they have just accepted them, because they see immediately that this is the truth.
It really teaches men that there is no difference in mankind when it comes to God, and it shows that it's not a political matter. It doesn't have anything to do with the NAACP, CORE, or any of the organizations like this, but it is a religion that was brought about through God and the understanding of Him.
I visited the temple back in 1949 or so, and caught the idea intellectually that Baha'u'llah is a prophet of God. But as these people say, sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other. And this was true in this case. It was 3 years before I heard another talk, and it started to penetrate my crusty old heart, and I realized that this was true. This was from God.
Being a Korean by ancestry, I have had the Shintoist and Buddhist backgrounds. My parents were then converted into Christianity, and so I learned the Christian precepts. But I felt that that was not enough, that it was not the all-encompassing thing I felt was available somewhere in the world. So when I found the faith, the Baha'i faith, I realized this encompassed everything. I could be Buddhist, and I could be a Mohammedan, and a Christian, and a Jew, and still be a Baha'i, and still worship the same God.
Baha'is from extremely different cultural levels receive the same motivation, the same impulse toward these principles of unity, and in a sense become closer in their viewpoint than their next door neighbors. And I can visualize this happening in larger and larger numbers, and thus helping to bring about the kind of unified world which so many of us have dreamed for, but have felt was almost beyond the bounds of practical possibility.
Something else that struck me very strongly in this whole faith is that there were so many volumes of books, not books that had been brought down by interpretations of other individuals, but books that have been written by the founder of the faith himself. And it's just like going and getting the pure source of spiritual sustenance. And I'm thoroughly convinced that when the world recognized that the faith has been given to the entire world, all of mankind, and when we examine the social teachings for this day and age, more people will enter into the Baha'i faith.
Since the Baha'i faith has no formal clergy, CBS correspondent Dallas Townsend asked Mrs. Mildred Motahede, who represents the Baha'is at the United Nations, to speak for the Baha'i faith in America.
Mrs. Mottahedeh, as faiths go, the Baha'i faith has come rather recently on the American scene. It wasn't heard of in this country before 1893. And that being the case, I imagine that not too many Americans are very familiar with the Baha'i faith. I wonder if you could tell us what the Baha'is do in this country.
They do their very best to try to help Americans become what is inevitable, the citizens of the world. After all, we are the leading country of the world, and we have a very important part to play in the destiny of the world. And so it is extremely important what Americans think and believe. And we feel the Baha'i faith gives them an attitude which will enable them to help develop a happy and peaceful world where people can evolve to their highest capacity. We know now that because of emotional stresses and other reasons in our present life, that people are only developed 10% of their capacity. And when we can look forward to that day when everyone can find not only his personal but social milieu, then we will have the kind of civilization we have hoped for since the time man emerged from the slime.
The tenets of your faith, Mrs. Mottahedeh, state that you must not engage in partisan politics. That being so, what are your principal areas of action?
I would say that we are engaged in the question of the body politic, which is not politics in its partisan sense, but in the sense of evolving a better society. And as Baha'is, we live in many, many communities. We are citizens of these communities. We try to embody in our lives the Baha'i ideals, which isn't very easy, I might tell you, because some of them are perhaps a matter of long training. We also try to tell other people why we think that this is the only way a peaceful world civilization will evolve.
I know a good many people who call themselves Christians, Mrs. Mottahedeh, who are really rather passive Christians. Would you say that's the case with the majority of the Baha'is, or are they active?
I would say that the largest majority of the Baha'is are very active. Sometimes, I might say, almost too active. When they go into a bank to cash a check, they may even stop the teller and tell him all about the Baha'i faith, which is maybe not the time and the place. But Baha'is always have it in their minds that the message that they have is the one for which humanity has been waiting for a long, long time. And therefore they feel it's unfair not to tell everybody about it.
By this, do you mean that they proselytize for the faith?
Well, they tell people what they believe, and they point out why they think that it is spiritually satisfying, why it develops the human being, and why it makes them a better citizens of their communities.
What about the pioneers, the volunteer workers who go into communities in this country and also in other countries? What do they do?
First of all, they must find a job, because as you know, we have no paid clergy. And after they find jobs, just like all people coming to all cities or little towns, they make friends. And perhaps the Baha'is try harder to make friends because they see in every human being a, what shall I say, a sign of God, since all of us are created by the same Father. And so they find being friendly very, very easy. And by the example of their lives and what they say, they gradually attract a community, and then the community begins to function.
What areas do you find that you especially concentrate on? I can see from talking to you that you're a very active Baha'i.
Well, my particular field is the international field, since I have represented the Baha'is of the world at the United Nations since 1948. And therefore, most of my work is involved with diplomats and people in the international field who many of them know about the Baha'i faith and some not. And then, of course, I have a great many business contacts and so on. All of them know that I am a Baha'i and what it is that I believe.
Mrs. Mottahedeh, this country has many faiths represented in it. Several hundred, I believe.
faiths and different sects. That being the case, what do you see as the long-term future of the Baha'i faith?
I think when a prophet speaks, unlike a philosopher, his words have the potency of being that of the divine will. We see by reading the history of civilization that unlike all other sciences, the prophet states the theory of civilization and the people rise up to prove it. I think this is true in the case of the Baha'i Faith too, which is merely the latest chapter in God's religious book, by no means the last chapter. This is the chapter of unity, the unity of man and the unity of religions. And I feel that all this ecumenism which is taking place now is part of the potency of this release of the force of unity this time. And I cannot but believe that the dream of all religions will come true, that we will be all brothers living under one Father, God.
The Baha'i community has neither a ritual nor a priesthood. At Baha'i religious ceremonies, there are no sermons or collections. Members are charged with the responsibility of the faith by continuous study, discussion, and prayer. The most important prayer, Baha'is believe, is a person's daily life. Religion, in other words, is, according to Baha'i teaching, an attitude toward God reflected in life. Baha'u'llah's approach to life and religion were twofold. Unity, the unity of God, the unity of his prophets, and the oneness and wholeness of man.
CBS News has presented Lamp Unto My Feet. Today, and his name shall be one.